Chapter 9. The feeling that he could visit Amanda in dreams haunted Abel. Perhaps he could reach her during his waking hours as well. He began sending her mind messages. Sitting in the crotch of his favorite branch on the birch, he would project his thoughts, feelings, questions, yearnings, and what he considered the direction of his home. Sometimes he felt that Amanda could hear those messages and was responding with loving messages of her own. This feeling elated him. He became convinced he could fly to his wife through the air or glide like a flying squirrel. He made a glider by stretching a catalpa leaf across two sticks, attached it to his back, and climbed to the top of his birch. From there he flung himself into the void, arms outstretched, aiming for the far shore. Instead of the soaring ride he had anticipated, he made a slow, graceful half-circle, heels overhead, and thudded down on his back in the grass. He lay there for hours, broken-hearted and dazed with pain. When body and spirits recovered, he took to climbing on his birch again. One day, when he was winding his way upward around and around the trunk, it seemed to him that the tree was somehow aware of his ascending spiral, and that it enjoyed his delicate scurryings, just as he enjoyed the rugged toughness and sensible architecture of the tree. He felt the tree knew his feelings, though no words could pass between them. He believed in his visits with Amanda. He had his birch and his star, and the conviction grew in him that the earth and the sky knew he was there and also felt friendly. So he was not really alone and not really entirely lonely. At times he'd be overcome by sudden ecstasy and prance about on high rocks, or skip along the limbs of trees, shouting meaningless syllables. He was, after all, in the prime of his life. Late in September, when he woke up mornings, he would see rime on the ground. That and the nip in the air made him worry about the coming of winter. What if he was still there? In his tours of the island, he had found acorns and hickory nuts, and also wild sunflowers. Full of seed, he began storing those in his log. Living in the heart of nature, he began to realize how much was going on in the seeming stillness. Plants grew and bore fruit, branches proliferated, buds became flowers, clouds formed in ever new ways and patterns. Colors changed. He felt a strong need to participate in the designing and arranging of things. The red clay from which he had fashioned pots and dishes inspired him to try his hand at making something just for its own sake, something beautiful. He made a life-size statue of Amanda. Though it didn't really resemble her, it did look like a female mouse. He was amazed at what he had wrought. Good or bad, it was a sculpture. It was art. He tried again and again, profiting from his mistakes, and finally he felt he had a likeness of his wife real enough to embrace. Next, he made statues of his dear, indulgent mother, from whose wealth his own income came, and of his various sisters and brothers, and he stood them all outside his log, where he could see them from the windows. Another day he did his father, him he carved in tough wood, fiercely gnawing the forms out with his teeth. He stood back often to study the results of his gnawing, and at last he felt he had captured the proud, stern, aloof, strong, honest look of his male parent. He stood this statue next to that of his mother. Abel had not been keeping track of the days, but the color of the leaves was being transformed from green to various yellows, burning golds, flaming reds, and he realized it was October. He gathered masses of fluff from the seed pods of milkweed to keep him warm in his log. With threads of grass he wove mats for his floor and curtains for his windows to keep out drafts, and he tacked these curtains up with thorns. Later he made shutters out of bark. He relayed the news of his doings to Amanda, sure that his airborne messages reached her. He added to his winter store of food at what he thought was her urging, and meanwhile he kept dining on what remained available outdoors. At night, from its eminence, his stars shone down on him with proud approval. When the trees were in their full flame of autumn's fire, Abel wandered aimlessly over the island until the sight of the high color had him glowing inwardly, with sensations of yellow, orange, and red. He pressed the juice from elderberries he had garnered earlier in the month and stored it in clay pots to let it turn to wine. His paws and shirt were stained with purple, but he no longer cared about his appearance. In gray November, when the dry leaves huddled in drifts on the ground, he made a remarkable discovery. He thought he had thoroughly explored the island. He hadn't. Near the lower end, by the eastern shore, he found a huge watch with a chain and an enormous book. The watch was as large as a dining table to accommodate 3 mice. The book was 4 taels long, 3 wide, and almost a tael thick. There was a stone on top of it, and it was the stone, no doubt, and the lay of the ground that had kept it from being washed away in the flood. Judging by its condition, the book had been there some time, and had seen several changes of weather in addition to the flood. The cloth binding was puffed into blisters and wrinkled. The title, Sons and Daughters, was faded and hard to discern. Some large creature had been on the island, perhaps picnicking, and had gone away, forgetting the book and the watch. Probably the stone had been placed on the book to keep it from blowing open. Abel's heart raced. The island was known to civilized creatures and would be visited again. He would have to leave signs all about to make his presence known. Meanwhile, he was curious about the book. With great effort, he rolled away the stone, which was larger than himself, and pried the stiff cover open. The pages were buckled and water-stained, but the type was clear enough. He managed to separate the title page from page 1 and began reading, pacing from side to side on the printed lines. The book opened with a description of a masquerade ball. The characters were bears, which, like other large animals, had always fascinated Abel. It was wonderful to have a long book to entertain him and keep him company. He decided to read a chapter each day. He closed the book and carefully buried it under a heap of leaves to prevent further damage by sun and rain. Then, with the end of the chain slung over his shoulder, he began hauling the watch to his house. It was heavy, but the smooth platinum of the case slid over the dry fallen leaves and made the hauling not too hard.